Well, he was known as Cassius Clay, but wanted to be known as Muhammad Ali. Remember Muhammad Ali? He wrote a book entitled, I Am the Greatest, taken from a quote of his. Ali said, I am the greatest, and I said that before I even knew it. He also one time said, I'm so fast that last night I turned the light off in my hotel room and was in bed before the room was dark. Fast. He also said, if you dream of beating me, you better wake up and apologize. He believed in himself. And of course, he was good at what he did. That's true. Whether we agree with other things about it or not. He thought he was the greatest. And so do some in the church think the same. I'm the greatest. Luke chapter 9, chapter 9, and, well, you look at verse 46, just before the text. 9:46, there was an argument arose among the disciples, the followers of Jesus, who've walked and talked with Jesus now for nearly 3 years. An argument arose among them as to which of them were the greatest. Jesus, knowing the reasoning of their hearts, took a child, put it by his side, said, whoever receives this child receives me. Whoever receives me, receives him who sent me. For he who is least among you is the one who is great. And John the apostle, this is our text, John the disciple, answered Jesus. Remember, whoever's the least among you is the greatest. John answered, Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name. And we tried to stop him because he did not follow us. He did not follow with us. Jesus said to him, do not stop him. For the one who is not against you is for you. Insiders, outsiders. Now some of you know, and I won't go into any real detail on this, some of you know that I was very closely involved in working with, in a law office, a gentleman who started a little ministry in Pineville. He had a little church of about 30 people. Byron Baptist Church. About 30 people. And now you can go by and see all the buildings with a congregation of over 800 people. I know how that got that way, but I won't go into all of that. And if you look at that structure, and you can see it as you're driving down the expressway, right at the next block, within sight, is a little dilapidated red brick church building of the same denomination that has been there for 80, 90 years, I guess. And they're struggling, but they're hanging on. And many times when we go by there, I've said to June in the car, I wonder how those poor people I really feel for them. But they're hanging on. And in knowing this gentleman well, and in many a conversation with him about ministry, he would tell me, now be ready for this, he would tell me how vicious, long time, old time pastors in Alec and Pineville treated him when he was successful. It's sad for me to stand here and tell you that in the ministry, the professional ministry, there is a lot of what is called jealousy. Oh yes, there is. And you think about it. We don't know how we would feel. We say, oh, not us. Suppose an imagination. A large American corporation has come and built a humongous, big factory between Evergreen and Cottonport. Bought up all that land and built a huge factory, and they brought in an influx of over 1,000 workers from outside who suddenly there, and they're living there. They built them homes, they're here. And they built a big new church. Here's little Evergreen, struggling along. You don't know how you'd feel. Sometimes people become upset with success of their competition. No, I think we're in competition, but we're just not real. Why did these disciples feel this way? Why did John say, stop that man, he's casting out demons, he's got to quit? Well, all you got to do is just go back to verse 40. Do you remember what happened in verse 40 of this same 9th chapter? Jesus, James, and John have been up on the mountain of transfiguration, great spiritual experience of seeing the glorified Jesus. They come down the mountain the next morning. And when these 3 disciples and Jesus come down, the other disciples were down there, and a poor fella, a father, had brought a little child to the disciples to be healed. And verse 40 is the plaintive cry of this father as he speaks to Jesus. And I begged your disciples to cast it out, the demon that was causing these convulsions in this little tiny child. And he said, I begged your disciples to cast him out, but they could not. If you look at the parallel passage of that in Mark chapter 9, the disciples of Jesus entered a house, and his disciples asked Jesus privately, why could we not cast out the demon? And he said to them, this kind cannot be driven out except by prayer, and many manuscripts add the word fasting. Jesus is saying, you fellas didn't have it. John said, I see a guy who has it, and I told him to stop. Why did the disciples feel they had to stop the outsider? Because they, the insiders, couldn't do it. And sometimes if we fail as a church, as a preacher, as Christians, when we fail, sometimes we get upset when other people succeed, and it bothers us. Instead, we ought to learn and appropriate the ideas and the thoughts that other people have. So John's problem, first of all, was that there was success when they had failed. His problem also was this fella went his way instead of their way. We don't always like to think of people who don't go our way, because we think our way is right way, only way. And other people are different. June kind of gets upset with me when I go to the store to shop, and especially grocery store. I'm a label reader. Oh yes, I love to stand there and read the label, all the ingredients, the percentages. Just go to the brands that you know. Just go to the brands you like. And you know, that's a sign that we're getting old, Jim, when we just go to the brands we know and like. You got to read the label. And there is a phenomenon all over our country now of churches that are springing up by the thousands all over this country. Community churches, family worship centers, fellowship centers. You don't know what they are. You have no idea where they're coming from. You don't know what the ingredients are. You're just looking at the label. And it is the fastest growing phenomena among Protestant churches in our country today is the non-denominational, non-descriptive, take the sign, the shingle off the wall, and just make it for anybody, for everybody, no matter what. And that's all right. I have no problem with that, really. Except I want to know what I'm getting into. Why are you a Baptist? Are you a Baptist, number one? And why? It just so happened that outside of Fort Polk, Louisiana, I went to a Baptist church at age 19. And came to know Jesus Christ as my Savior. Could that have happened in a Pentecostal church, Assembly of God church, Methodist church, Presbyterian church, Lutheran church? Could that have happened in any other kind of church? If God was bringing me into Christ, and Jesus said no one can come to me except the Father draws him, that could have happened anywhere, among any people. Any time. I did not look at the 200 or 300 denominations that were around Leesville and study them all and decide I want to be a Baptist. I did not do that. Did you? Be honest about it. Why are you Baptist? Most because you just came up in it. Come on. You were nurtured in it. You didn't choose it. And how many of us, even after we are a Baptist, investigate it, think about it, question it, study it, and come to grips with it? How many of us even know what we believe? You know what this is? How many of you know what this is? One. Ah, you went to seminary. This is called the Baptist Faith and Message. You know what this is? In 1925, Baptists drew up a set of ideas and beliefs that they had accepted. That wasn't good enough, so back in 1963, they did it again. And in the year 2000, June 14th, 2000, as a matter of fact, they did it again. They used to give these out. Sorry, I've got to pay 50 cents to get one of these now. It's the Baptist Faith and Message. I've read it. But it says right in the preface that no one reads, we do not regard these as a complete statement of faith having any quality of finality or infallibility. In other words, this isn't final. They say it isn't. Any group of Baptists, large or small, have an inherent right to draw up for themselves and publish to the world a confession of their beliefs. Here's another one. The sole authority for faith and practice, this book, is the scriptures of the Old and New Testament. Oh, that sounds good, but wait a minute. Somebody has to figure out what those scriptures mean. They got to interpret them. Somebody's going to have to do that. You're going to have to figure it out. And these are not meant to hamper freedom of thought. These are not meant to hamper freedom of thought or investigation. I agree with everything in here except one thing, by the way. There's one thing, and I even mark it, that I don't believe in. I'm not going to go into that right now. We'll do that in another sermon sometime. But there's one sentence in here I just don't agree with. I don't believe. I told you last week that I learned my doctrine from this Rodman hymn, which is where a lot of you learned your doctrines, from your hymn books. I learned it in Sunday school classes, Bible study classes, in little churches. I happened to go to a Baptist college. I went to a Southern Baptist seminary. I read books written by many Baptist people, so I'm a Baptist. Come on. These happen to be Baptist classes. I look at everything and I look at it through Baptist classes. If you're Catholic, you're going to look through Catholic classes. If you're Assembly of God, you're going to look through Assembly of God classes. You can't do it totally divorced from anything in your past thought or present understanding. I read my Bible through these glasses, just as you do yours. Beliefs. There's all kinds of beliefs. You know what ecumenical assembly is? Ecumenical means all different denominations coming together for a meeting to see what they share in common. This has been on the internet for years, in books, magazines, you've heard it, about the ecumenical gathering, that they were meeting together in a hotel and somebody saw fire coming out of a stove and they yelled, "Fire! Fire!" Methodists, they gathered in the corner and prayed. The Baptists said, "Where's the water?" The Charismatics raised their hands and praised God for the blessings that fire would give. The Lutherans posted on the door outside declaring that fire is evil. The Roman Catholics passed a plate to cover the expense of the damage. The Congregationalists shouted, "Every man for himself." The fundamentalists proclaimed, "This fire is the deserved vengeance of God." The Episcopalians formed a procession and marched out. The Christian Scientists, they concluded that there is no such thing as fire. There just isn't. The Presbyterians, my roots, they appointed a chairperson who was to appoint a committee to look into the matter and submit a written report. And an atheist walked in, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and put out the fire. We've got all these different groups with these different ideas, and we're one of them. This church was established in 1841, right? Southern Baptist Convention did not come into being until 1845. You know why they came into being in Atlanta, Georgia? Over slavery. Over the appointment of missionaries to Africa and other places whose families owned slaves. And the Northern Baptists and the Southern Baptists split. So we were a church before there was a Southern Baptist Convention, folks. It is sad that we are so harsh on one another. In 1856, Heinrich Heine, a journalist and a German poet who was born a Jew and converted to Christianity as an adult, said these words, "Where they have burned books, they will soon burn people." Was he right?
Yes.
I'm going to close with the gentleman Paul. In Philippians chapter 1, he said, "Son, preach Christ from envy and rivalry, and others from goodwill." All different motives for preaching. Some proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. What then? Only in every way, whether it's pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. That's a gentleman. John said, "Stop. You don't go with us. You don't fellowship with us. You're not one of our people. You're not one of the insiders." And Jesus said, "Leave him alone." Thank God that those who are not against you are really for you. Super glue is pretty good, isn't it? Boy, just a drop of glue and you can pick up a car with a magnet. Isn't that what they say? Super glue is pretty good. The only super glue for a church